Alrighty, in this video we're going to put together our push notification receiver. So basically we need to register something called a broadcast receiver with our application manifest and then create the corresponding class inside of our project. And that class, that object, that broadcast receiver is going to be pinged every time a notification comes in. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. First I'm going to open up my manifest, and inside of my manifest, underneath my application block, as the first element, I suppose, so we can separate it from our activities, I'm going to open up a receiver. And for the name, I'm going to give it a specific name. I'm going to give it .receivers.notification receiver. Now this class, this is a name of a class, and it doesn't exist yet, but it will momentarily. We'll write that class out after we finish the manifest. Then I'm going to give it a permission of our COM Google Android C2DM permission.send. Inside of the receiver, I'm going to give it an intent filter, which just describes under what conditions the receiver is going to be pinged. So I'm going to give it an action of name COM Google Android C2DM intent receive, RECEIVE. Make sure you spell that correctly. And then a category of name COM Buzz Yora. All right, so now that we have that done, let's go ahead and create our receiver class. Actually, you know what? Before we create the receiver class, I'm going to create another class that's going to contain some constants that we're going to need. It's not only going to contain some constants, but it's also going to contain the notification we're going to push onto our service bus to let all of our activities know when a push notification has been received. So inside my services namespace, I'm going to add a new class called events. Just like what we did with our other service classes, as this kind of a wrapper for other arbitrary data. So I'm going to make a public final class with a private constructor so that we can instantiate it. Then I'm going to create some constants. I'm going to create a public static final int operation created equals 0, and a public static final int operation deleted equals 1. Then I'm going to go ahead and create a public static final int entity contact request equals 1, public static final int entity contact equals 2, and a public static final int entity message equals 3. Now these constants are very important to have them be what I've listed here. Don't change the numbers at all, because those numbers are actually also programmed into the server itself. Then I'm going to create a public static class on notification received event. And this guy is going to have a public int operation type, a public int entity type, a public int entity ID, and a public int entity owner ID. And then I'm going to create a constructor with all of these parameters. So this event is going to be what's the rest of the application is going to receive when it receives a push notification. And every single push notification that my server sends out is in this format. So our operation type, pretty straightforward, was something created or deleted. Our entity type, what was created or deleted. Our entity ID, the ID of the thing that was created or deleted. And the entity owner ID is the owner of that entity. For example, if this were a contact request, the entity owner ID would be the user who sent the contact request. Or if this was a message, the entity ID would be the ID of the message, and the entity owner ID would be the ID of the sender. Now that we have that done, we can go ahead and create our receiver. So I'm going to right-click our main package, select New Package, and I'm going to say Receivers, just so it matches up with what we have in the Android manifest. Then inside of Receivers, I'm going to right-click, create a new Java class, and I'm going to call this our Notification Receiver. And then I'm going to remove that comment, and then I'm going to go ahead and have it inherit from broadcast receiver. And then I'm going to hit Alt-Enter to implement its receive method. Now before I move on, I want to make sure I spelled everything correctly. So I'm going to jump back into my Android manifest and make sure that this error goes away. It looks like I didn't spell things correctly. So let's go ahead and clear out this name. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to use the autocomplete to do that. Looks like I misspelled receiver. So let's go ahead and fix that and that, and then come back here to our notification receiver, right-click, refactor, select rename, and then I'm going to make that correctly spelled, jump back to our Android manifest, and we are now correctly spelled, and everything is awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a private static final string tag equals notification receiver. And then I'm going to create a private auth and a private your application. Now, the onReceive method is what gets invoked, and our application actually may or may not be running, quote unquote, when this happens. In Android, applications aren't really running or not running, but the notification receiver, no matter if there's something on the foreground or not, will have this method be invoked. So what I'm going to do here is I want to go ahead and I want to extract out all of the data that was sent to us by the server, and then I'm going to do a big switch, and I'm going to do something different depending on the type of the entity, and then I'm also going to publish the onNotificationReceived event to all of our activities that might be listening to it, which might be no activities, if, for example, the application hasn't been running. First off, though, I'm going to grab my values here. So I'm going to say application equals your application context. I'm going to cast the context in. I'm going to say auth equals application.getAuth. And then I'm going to say bus equals application get bus. Now I'm going to open up a try block because I'm going to be doing some integer parsing in this. I'm going to say int operation equals integer dot parse int, and then I'm going to pass an intent dot get string extra. I'm going to pass an operation. So this is data that the server is sending. It is sending data that got stuffed into this intent. Specifically, it was a JSON object, but it got serialized down to this intent for us. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this line 4 times and change operation on this to type, and then I'm going to change operation type over there. I'm going to add entity ID. I'm going to change this to the string literal to entity ID, and then I'm going to do entity owner ID equals entity owner ID. There's one more parameter that I can use. I'm going to do string entity owner name equals intent dot get string extra entity owner name, which does remind me, I was intending to have entity owner name be on our event. So let's go ahead and fix that real fast and pretend that I didn't forget that by jumping over to events. And I'm going to add a public string entity owner name. And then at the end of the constructor here, I'm going to say string entity owner name. And then I'm going to say entity owner name equals entity owner name. So make sure that you add it in the 3 places. You add the field, you add the constructor parameter, and you add the assignment. Now let's hop back here, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say events.onNotificationReceived event equals new events.onNotificationReceived event, and I'm going to fill out its constructor with our parameters. So operation, type, entity ID, entity owner ID, and entity owner name. Then what I'm going to do is I want to show a notification up on the top of the screen whenever a push notification comes in, and I want to change the text of that depending on the type. So I'm going to say if type equals events.entity contact, then I'm going to say send contact notification event. Else if type equals events.entity contact request, then send contact request notification event. Else if type equals events entity message, then send message notification event. Now we'll write those methods here in a second, but let's wrap this method up first. The last thing I want to do is say bus.post event so that any running activities can take advantage of that. Finally, I'm going to add a catch block for number format exception E, and I'm going to say log E tag error parsing message E. And then all the way at the bottom here, I'm going to say set result code to result or activity.result OK. So we'll go ahead and notify the operating system that we successfully handled the push notification. Now that we have that all done, let's go ahead and implement our notifications. So in this case, I only want to pop up a notification on the top of the screen if it was a new message notification or a contact request notification. So I'm going to write a private void send contact request notification. Well, I'll do the I'll stub out the send contact notification, but it's going to be empty. Events dot on notification received event, but we'll leave that empty on purpose. Then for the send contact request notification, it's also going to take an events on notification received event. And for this guy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if event.operation equals events operation deleted, or event.entity owner ID equals auth get user get ID, then return. I don't want to show a notification on the screen if it was a contact request that we sent, or if it was a contact request that was deleted. Next up, I'm going to build up a notification object that can be sent on the operating system. So I'm going to say notification compat.builder equals new notification compat.builder. And then I'm going to pass an application for the context. And then I'm going to add .set small icon r.mitmap .ic launcher. So we're setting the icon itself to our application icon, which in this case is just the default, and you can obviously replace that with whatever you want. I'm going to set the content title to event.entityOwnerName sent you a contact request on Yora, and then I'm going to say set content text, click here to view it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to invoke a method we haven't made yet called send notification, and I'm going to pass in our event.entityID. I'm going to pass in our builder, and I'm going to pass in a new intent of application for the context and main activity.class. So when we write this send notification method, it'll make it so that when you click on a notification, it'll launch the main activity, which is where our contact requests appear. So that works out pretty well. Now let's do our send message notification. So events.on notification received event. And we do the same thing here. I'm going to say if event.operation type equals events.deleted, or event.entity owner ID equals auth get user get ID, then return, because we're not interested in getting notified of our own messages that we sent. Then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'll just copy and paste it. I'll just grab this notification compat builder and just paste it down here. I'll change its parameters to, instead of sent you a contact request, sent you a message. Everything else I'll keep the same. My intent, however, is going to be a little bit more interesting. I'm going to do intent equals new intent, passing in application for the context, and passing in message activity.class for the class. Then I'm going to do intent put extra, and I'm going to pass in message activity.extra message ID event.entity ID. So this will cause our message activity to launch when they click on the notification, and it'll launch to that message that was sent. Then I'm going to say send notification, passing in event.entity ID, builder, and passing in our intent that we just built. All right, the last thing we need to do is build our send notification. So we're going to do private void send notification. It's going to take an int entity ID, a notification compat dot builder, and an intent. Now what I'm going to do here is going to look pretty ugly, but basically all it does is I'm recreating an artificial backstack. So when they click on the click on the notification, then hit back, it's not going to keep them locked in the application. It'll take them back to where they were before they clicked on the notification. So I'm going to create a task stack builder. I'm going to call it stack builder. And I'm going to say equals task stack builder dot create, passing an application for the context. Then I'll do stack builder dot add parent stack message, or in this case, we can go ahead and do message activity dot class for that. And then we're going to go ahead and do stack builder add next intent. Then I'm going to say pending intent equals stack builder dot get pending intent 0 pending intent dot flag update current. Now pending intent, I'll call this pending intent instead to make it more clear. It's an intent that kind of wraps another intent that can be launched at any time in the future. Think of it like kind of like a promise or something that in the future they can go ahead and launch that. It's not like a real intent, but we're going to wrap it around our real intent. Then I'm going to do builder, which is our notification builder, dot set content intent, and then I'm going to do pending intent. Then I'm going to go ahead and do notification manager. Notification manager equals cast a notification manager. Application get system service, and I'm going to pass in for the system service context dot notification service. Then I'm going to create my notification. So I'm going to say notification equals builder.build. And then I'm going to go ahead and say notification.flags or equals, make sure you got that or equals and it's not just an equals, notification.flag underscore auto cancel. That'll make the notification go away when the user clicks on it. And then I'm going to say, actually, I can take this notification manager and dump him down here because we don't need him until right here. And I'll say notify entity ID notification. So basically the steps are we build up a task stack builder, we turn it into a pending intent, and then we create a notification out of it. And then after we do that, we send the notification to the operating system. Let's go ahead and test that real fast. I'm going to hit play. Just make sure this works first, because that now we'll be able to see the notification at the top. You also might want to see if, you might not want to send notifications if any activity in your application is open. You can do that by tracking how many activities have been opened and how many activities have been closed with the activity lifecycle callback, but that's kind of out of scope at this point. I just want to see our push notifications working, because at this point, really, you guys can do whatever you want. You have access to your application's code base entirely from within your notification receiver, and that's a pretty powerful way to go about this. So let's go ahead and have our applications launch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a message. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to say reply. I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to type a message, stuff and things. I'll hit send. We'll send our notification out, or our application out, and we get a exception on both the cases. So let's jump back into our application here and try to see if we can take a look at the logcat without without that failing. Let's try that again. I'm going to try to send another message here. So we're definitely getting some errors, but unfortunately my logcat is still... Here we go. Oh, we have a couple errors. Mark message as read response does not extend service response. So let's go ahead and fix that first. I'm going to go into my messages, find my mark message as read, and it does. So it seems that there could be an issue on the server itself that it's sending... I'm going to go ahead and restart the app. Restarting the app is usually a good idea. I really just want to get whatever exception was thrown in that broadcast receiver, because that's where I bet most of the problem is. See, now the server's working just fine. It's something in that notification receiver, and I need to get that error. So let's hope... Oh, yep, we got our exception. Sweet. So, unable to start receiver. Receiver restricted context. Restricted context cannot be cast to Yora context. I made a small mistake here. Instead of context, I meant to say get application context. So now let's hit play again. However, that does prove that our receiver is correctly set up. It just, well, otherwise wasn't. Working. Get stuff and things and words. I'm trying to just stall for this application to launch. All right, we got one application. Oh, fine. I'll just go ahead and accept that. Wow, that was ridiculously annoying. All right, let's send a message. Take a picture. Send a message. And we're not getting a notification there. However, we did not get an exception. So what I want to do here is I want to go ahead and set up a log here real fast. Right after this, I want to say log.e, and I'll do operation plus type plus entity ID plus entity owner ID plus entity owner name. And of course I want my tag in there too. Let's just do that real fast, and I'll hit run. And I'm just doing that just to debug that we're getting the appropriate messages for this. I'm sure there's just probably a dumb bug here somewhere. Maybe I got one of the constants mixed up, I suppose. Now, don't worry about that, how it crashes sometimes right on start. That's because sometimes it's in the middle of doing something where the application gets restarted. Anyway, so let's go ahead and send a new message. And send. And then let's jump back here, and we see 0, 3, 12, 12, Nelson 3. It seems that... So 0 is the operation, and the 0 operation is created, which is good. The type is 3, and the type is message, I believe. Yes. And the entity ID is 12, and the entity owner ID is 12. Seems like a coincidence there. And then our entity owner name is Nelson 13. So it seems like we possibly... we're using the wrong task stack builder. So let's jump up to the top and let's find the Android app task stack builder and nuke that comment, or nuke that import. Come back here, and I'm going to hit Alt-Enter, and I'm going to say import class, but I'm going to select the v4 support library version. Now let's hit run. So it seems like our code very well may be executing, it's just we were using a combination of the compatibility library with the normal library, which might cause issues. We'll see if that is indeed the issue or not in a moment here, when our application decides to restart. Yeah, you can ignore that. Error. And we did get a notification with a blank text, and it did seem to work, except for it was blank. Let's go ahead and reply to this and see what happens here on our other device. We did immediately get a notification, but it is blank, and it doesn't seem to have a icon. So we're getting further, I think. I think possibly what would be going wrong with that is we're passing in our builder here, and let's see. Oh, could quite have to do with the fact that I said set content text instead of set content title. Let's just fix that and test it one more time. And ultimately, though, I think we're pretty much good here. The only thing I want to do after this is I want to go ahead and just show you guys examples of how you can go about adding code inside of the application that'll respond to the notifications instantly. So for example, automatically adding a new message or something to that effect. Or automatically refreshing our inbox or something to that effect. So we'll go ahead and do that. And we'll go ahead and do that. And we send that. And we get sent you a message. And if I click to view it, I get the message. And if I close it, I get back to whatever else I happened to be doing. Let's go ahead and check the contact request first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select my contact and I'm going to remove him. So Nelson 12 is no longer friends. Then I'm going to go ahead and add Nelson 12. Send contact request. And don't seem to have gotten a notification for that. We did get a 01 12 Nelson 13. So let's go ahead and check out what's going on with this. The owner ID equals that. Oh, it just seems I was on the wrong device Because of course I was. So now if I send Nelson13 here, that's not how you spell my name, Nelson13 here, send contact request, I seem to get a notification for myself. It seems to be backwards here. So let's take one close look at the code here and figure out. So if the operation type is events deleted, or the entity owner ID is auth get user get ID, then cancel. Let's make sure that our entity owner ID is being set up properly, which it should be. Entity owner ID, entity owner ID. And that comes from entity owner ID, which is the second value there. If I open up Android, you'll notice that we received 011211. Oh, you guys probably think I'm stupid, don't you? This should have been entity owner ID. I think I said it multiple times. I was reading through code. Now, that's just one of those bugs that impossible to avoid, especially at 4:04 in the morning. All right. So I think that's really just about it for that. So now let's go ahead and have some fun with more interesting push notification types. Right after I make sure this works, I'm pretty confident it's going to work. First things, though, is I'm going to delete that friend request. So I'm going to reject it. And then I'm going to send him a friend request by adding a new contact and searching for Nelson12, sending contact request. And as you see, it immediately pops up right here. And if I click on this, I get sent back to my main activity where I can accept the friend request or contact request. All right, let's make this just a little bit more interesting here. I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to jump over into the main activity. So I'm going to go to Activities, Main Activity, and I'm going to go ahead and add some code here that will handle that event whenever a notification is sent. So all the way here at the bottom, I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to say subscribe public void on notification events dot on notification received event, and then I'm going to do if event.entity type equals events entity message, if event.operation type equals events.operation create, then I'm going to say bus post new messages, search messages request, false true. Otherwise, if it was a delete, let's just go ahead and delete that message. So I'm just going to do a linear search over our messages array. Messages.size, i++. And I'm going to say if messages.getI.getID equals event.entityID, then I'm going to say messages.remove I, and I'll just say adapter notify data set change. I won't worry about animations here. You guys could if you wanted to, though. And then I'll say break. Then I'll basically do the same thing over here. I'll say else if event.entity type, but this time I'm going to do equals events.entity contact request. And for here, I'm going to say basically the same thing. If event.entity type, operation type equals events created, then I'm going to say bus post new messages dot, and in this case, I'm just going to say get contact requests, or contacts dot get contacts request false to remove from us. And then otherwise, I'm going to say for int I equals 0, I smaller than contact request dot size I++, if contact request dot get ID, get user dot get ID equals event.entityID. Then we'll do contacts request dot remove I, adapter notify data set changed, and break. Also at the top, I'll do a I'll prevent it from doing this if the entity owner ID is us. So I'll say if event entity owner ID equals application get auth get user get ID, then return. Let's go ahead and also do this in our message activity as well, just to show the example of us handling different notifications in different circumstances. Actually, on this on notification, I of course want to wrap this in a scheduler.invoke on resume event get class and new runnable, which is going to require me to take all of this code, copy it or cut it, and then paste it in run. And then that'll also require that I mark events as final. So here's the final bit of code. I sometimes forget to wrap it on invoke on resume, but I want to make sure that happens so this code isn't running while the main activity is paused. Now for my message activity, this is going to be pretty straightforward. I'm just going to scroll down here, and I'm going to say subscribe public void on notification events.on notification events.on notification event. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say if event operation type equals events deleted, and event dot entity type equals events message, and event entity ID equals current message dot, oh come on, maybe I think it's telling me to break this up into multiple lines, because that's getting kind of like a long if statement there, equals our current message dot get ID. Then I want to go ahead and just delete ourselves. So remember how when we do the delete, where we say close message, pass in request image deleted, we're going to do that. Close message, and then request image deleted. I want to put one sanity check here at the top. I want to say if current message is null, then simply return. That means we haven't loaded a current message in yet, and so we want to ignore this notification. Now let's hit play. And those are really just two examples. You can go crazy with the notifications. My API will send out notifications for all three of those entity types when they're created or deleted, and you can go ahead and handle all those on your application. And that could that would make it a lot more responsive and a lot more like a real messaging application. But I just wanted to show you a couple quick examples of how to do this. So let's send a message to Nelson12. I'm going to reply. Take a picture, type in a message, hit send, and check that out. Right there, that new message appeared at the top. Now I'm going to go in here. While he's looking at that message, I'm going to delete it on this screen. And notice how he gets deleted. So again, if I come in here into a sent message, like let's say the one I sent at 3:57, and then I hit delete, notice how it gets deleted in both screens, and it also gets removed from his inbox automatically because his inbox detects when a message is being displayed and it returns the result that it was deleted. But yeah, that's push notifications. Pretty straightforward stuff. There's some more fun stuff you can do in the read about in the docs, but at the very least, you guys should have a general idea of how it all sort of fits together and how to implement it in your application. So at this point, I think we are ready to move into external logins. So I'll see you guys in the next video.